Okay. Financial report. Bennett, would you and Rob give us a financial report and how we're doing to date? And then we have your letter there that we need to look at.
Right. I mean, obviously, they're separate issues, if you will. The most recent financial that I circulated out, at least to the officers, was July 31st. I think most of you hopefully had a chance to look at that. So that's the most recent one, or most up-to-date, that we have available to circulate. We just got the bank statements in for August in the mail yesterday. So we'll start to work on August financials. So, Mr. Letchworth, if you want, I can give the short version of the financial report for the board, if you'd like me to.
Yes, please.
So, as of the close of July 31st, apologies, you've still got two accounts. You've got an operating account, which has got $41,296.93. And then you've got a restricted fund, which is a carryover fund from a designated fund that Jack Cumming created, which was restricted to President and President-elect travel several years ago. And as those two officers have submitted for reimbursement when and if they did, in terms of leadership expenses, mainly travel, that fund effectively gets drawn down from at the close of each year, and so that fund has $6,387.99. So total assets is $47,684.92. The board instituted a process several years ago where basically when people join as life members, you put forth a formula where you basically realized 1/10 of the life membership dues in the current fiscal year, and then deferred going forward the remainder of those dues for life members. So there is a deferred revenue liability that's on the books, and that changes obviously as you get more life members. That number goes up, generally speaking. The biggest thing of note is what your current operating income is for the year. So effectively, your annual budget for total revenue by the close of 12/31 of this year is $64,205. Through 7 months of the year, you are just over $26,000, $26,449.88. The biggest aspect of not close to budget at this stage in the fiscal year, and people do renew at different times of the year, so there is a cycle to NaCCRA's revenue in terms of when it comes in all of the categories. So you can't take the premise that 7 months in you should have 7 months of your revenue, because based on when people's renewal cycles are. But you are, quote unquote, tracking under budget, at this stage, depending on what occurs with people's renewals and things of that nature. If we look at the expense side, and that definitely correlates to one of the items that partners submitted in terms of financial considerations that the board talked about earlier in the summer, you have effectively expended $42,013.28 as of the close of July 31st. The biggest components to that are earlier this year, based on a previous agreement from Dan Seeger, there was a one-time contribution to the Washington affiliate state association, and there was a subsequent agreement to that. So early in the year, meaning this early fiscal year 16, you contributed $3,850 based on that relationship, and that was effectively that's non-recurring activity. Officer travel, you've got a budget of $8,000. You are already at $7,118.78, and that's not including what's going to occur in Indianapolis based on who might submit for reimbursement. The President-elect travel is at just over $2,000 thus far. Like I said, at the end of the year, based on the reserve fund, we can draw down from that, but it still has an impact on your overall assets. Lifeline printing, we're basically about 50% of budget, and you have obviously, as a board, made a decision to go quarterly, so that's going to help at least that particular line item in terms of the year-end. Staffing relates to your administrative office, which we submitted a memo relative to that situation for your consideration. You've had higher than budget membership expenses, which includes more requests for membership brochures than probably what we saw last year, and then also additional recruiting activities. One was effectively a test run in Florida, which is still in progress, and so there were additional expenses related to that. But at least in one particular case, that definitely did, achieve certainly some pretty strong new member recruitment, but that did go over budget. Then you've got the Washington dues share. So you, based on the nature of that process, that you budget for what you predicted expenses to be, but the budget obviously goes up or down based on the number of members, if you will, that Washington State recruits, and then there's a revenue share. So that revenue share thus far for the year is $4,860 just for that line item. But there's a revenue side to it as well. All the other operating expenses, if you will, because you don't have that many, are at or below budget. But the net expense, the gross expense outweighs the gross revenue as of July 31st. So pretty much for the full fiscal year, you've been running at a monthly deficit, and it's cumulatively built a deficit. I believe you will catch up some. Certainly with the partners change, that'll help a little bit. At the fourth quarter, Lifeline's going to help. But, depending on what happens on the top line with revenue in terms of recruitment and, maintaining strong retention, because you obviously with your membership base have natural attrition that occurs with people passing away or moving to skilled nursing, both of which are out of your control, and you can't predict that. As of 7/31, you are net operating loss so far is $15,563.40. I could tell you August and September revenues have been actually fairly strong. For one of the bigger areas in Florida, the Estates of Carpenters is an example where Charlie Falk resides and Bob Smith resides. Just got a check just from that one community today of $1,867, all of which is for individual members. So, it is picking up, but most of the year's not been very pretty in terms of net operating income.
Thank you, Bennett. Do you have the board have questions for Bennett?
I have a question. First, Bennett said that the financials have been shared. I haven't seen any financials. I
sent them to the executive committee.
Okay, so only the executive committee are privy to the financials?
Yeah. No, I did not forward them on to the rest of the board. Traditionally, I was submitting them to the executive committee, and then they were getting forwarded on. But
up to
if
them.
the president requires it or asks that, I can send it right to the board right now.
So I think it should go. But I thought that's my oversight. I thought it was going to all the board, Bennett, and I apologize for any misunderstanding. We all need to know this.
Bennett, you gave quite an elaborate analysis. Allowing, and I understand that you're reducing the services you provide to try to reduce the charges that you make to the organization, and that there are shifting patterns in both revenues and expenses. Given all of that, what is your assessment of what our current burn rate is, and how many months do we have before we run out of money?
I'll be honest with you, it's obviously it's going to be a guesstimate because we don't know what membership retention looks like, and we don't know some of the activities that some of you are undertaking are going to pan out in terms of recruitment. I know some of you are working very hard on that context. So not knowing what that looks like, if I would say based on historical of what we've seen happening for the beginning of the year, if nothing changes, I would say nothing changes. And something is going to change because partner scope of work is changing, and that's going to affect your monthly expenses. But it, doesn't mean it's going to be a windfall overall. I would say between, 6 to 9 months, if nothing materially changes, then you probably would be pretty close to no assets, if you will. That'd be your worst case scenario.
So it's urgent that the board really take a look at this and get the expenses in line with the revenue that we're generating. Would you agree with that?
I think that's a reasonable assessment, yes, sir.
Okay. So to be able to do that, the board needs to have access to the financial information.
No, and I totally agree, Jack, and I hope that after the call we'll send that out to all the board. Is there any other questions for Bennett? Do we now?
I would ask the officers, is there a plan to address this? It sounds like we're 6 to 9 months away from folding up.
I think I think the desire or the plan is to come together in Indianapolis in a face-to-face meeting with Bennett there, and to work out some way forward that both economizes what we have and maximizes some fundraising to get us on a more solid path.
But I think that Bennett's new proposal, he will not be in Indianapolis.
That's correct. I will not be there, sir. I would have to give you a narrative that the board can utilize on site, but I will not personally be there.
All right. But I think this precipitates a whole look at that our future, our structure, your point, Jack, about the leading benefit of adequacy for residents that fosters support. And it's looking at the whole, I hate to use the word ecology, but the whole ecology of, finances relates to your benefit that you receive, relates to how membership feels involved, relates to how membership responds to overtures to vote.
Well, my concern is, one, I know my position's not popular right now, but my concern is that the vote suggests a lack of engagement or even negativity on the part of the membership at the same time as the finances are failing, and so we're sort of running on fumes, and we need very clear, concrete action steps to address the situation, and Bennett has been effective in stepping forward of his own initiative to reduce the services he provides to try to reduce that as a factor of drain. But the vote suggests that 90% of the membership were so unengaged that they didn't vote at all, and that of the group who were engaged, they voted a vote of no confidence in what the board had recommended for adoption. Am I seeing this correctly, or am I being... I know Walt Boyer has said that I'm too pessimistic. Is this too pessimistic? Should we be optimistic and say all is fine?
I think it's realistic.
I think it's realistic and not optimistic or pessimistic. And I think this is why we need to put an emphasis on the the benefits of the organization, the structure we need to achieve the benefits, the money we need to do that, and it may not be that we're on the right track as we've been for the last 16 years. We're going to have to look at a new day because we have another component of a shaky relationship with states that created us and had a vision for NaCCRA. At the same time they created us, did not provide an infrastructure and funding. So that, I mean, it's the whole picture, but I think we lead with the benefit that NaCCRA is and build around that benefit that includes structure, officers, budget, and we may have to, it's a buzzword, but reinvent ourselves for a new day, and I think that's where that we can count on Walt to give us some vision from the leadership he's going to give.
Well,
so let's move on. And
before we move on, I'd like to ask a couple of questions about these services that are going to be provided after October the 1st, I believe it is, isn't it? It says coordinate the printing and distribution of printed membership applications when requested by members of the or board volunteers. I don't see anywhere where you're going to be receiving the dues and the applications and processing them.
Sure. Sorry, but that was unclear. But yes, that would be maintained if the board desires it. That we would still receive membership dues and process them, and that encompasses doing payables and receivables activities that we're doing now. So sorry if that's unclear, but that was didn't mean for it to be unclear, but definitely will clarify. Glad you asked that.
And the second question I have is, will your office continue to set up these telephone board meetings?
You have a line 1 conference call number, and there's a moderator number, which the board has access to that, and I know at least your executive committee has that information, and we'll circulate that out to the full board again. Long story short, we would not coordinate those calls. You can copy to let us know that they're occurring. So the board would, as you do now, create the agendas, circulate the board materials, and somebody from the board would sign in as moderator. And you've had volunteer leaders do that before, so it's not difficult.
Oh, so somebody on the board is going to have to do that.
That's
okay.
Correct.
All right.
Okay.
Anyway, when you dial the number that we have here, you're really dialing into a conference call. You're not dialing into the people who set it up. Well, anyway, since I'm not going to worry about it, since I'm not going to be doing it. Somebody else will have to worry about that, I guess.
Being it just works. I've used this law lawyer. I've used it with presidents, and it's not difficult at all.
Okay. I just wondered. Anyway, one of us will set it up. Okay.